Ambassador Katie Sullivan stared at the massive holographic message floating in front of her desk. The blue light cast strange shadows across her tired face as she read the words for the 5th time. Each reading made the message feel more real and more terrifying. The diplomatic vessel New Frontier hummed quietly around her as it traveled through the void between stars. Katie had been Earth's representative to the Galactic Council for 3 years now, and she had never received anything like this before. The message was short, formal, and delivered with the cold authority that only the Council could manage. She pressed a button on her desk. "Get me Admiral Morrison on a secure channel." Within minutes, Jake Morrison's weathered face appeared on her screen. The Admiral looked as tired as she felt. His gray hair was messy, and his uniform showed the wrinkles of a man who had been working too long without rest. "Katie, please tell me this is about something other than that message we all received," Jake said. "I wish it was, Jake. How bad does this look from your end?" Jake rubbed his forehead. "Bad. Really bad. They want us to hand over every military ship we have. Every single one. Then they want us to let them change our DNA to make us less aggressive. And finally, they want to put watchers on every human world to make sure we behave." Katie felt sick, all because they think we're too dangerous. That's what they say. But I've been talking to my people and we think there's more to it. Jake leaned forward. Captain Brooks found something interesting during his last mission. The screen split, and Ryan Brooks appeared. He was younger than both Katie and Jake, with dark hair and intense eyes that seemed to see everything. His ship, the Pioneer, was one of humanity's best exploration vessels. "Ambassador, Admiral," Ryan said. "We intercepted some Council communications 3 days ago. They weren't talking about us being dangerous, they were talking about us being too successful." "What do you mean?" Katie asked. "They're scared, ma'am. Really scared. In 50 years, we've gone from barely understanding their simplest technology to developing our own versions. We've explored more space than most species do in centuries. Our birth rate is higher than theirs, and we're expanding faster than they expected." Jake nodded grimly. Ryan's team also found evidence that we're not the first species they've done this to. Katie felt cold. What happened to the others? They disappeared from galactic records about 200 years ago. Just gone. Ryan's voice was quiet. "We found some ruins on a planet in the Outer Rim. The species that lived there had technology almost as advanced as the Council's. Then suddenly nothing." Dr. Lisa Chen's voice came through the communication system. She was humanity's best scientist, working on understanding alien technology from her lab on Earth. "I've been analyzing the genetic modification they want to do to us," she said. "It's not just about making us less aggressive. It would also reduce our creativity, our ability to innovate, and our willingness to take risks." They want to make us like them, Katie realized. Peaceful, obedient, and stuck at the same level forever. "That's exactly what they want," Jake agreed. "The question is, what do we do about it?" Katie looked at the message again. The High Arbiter Zenthari had given humanity 1 galactic year to comply. That was about 14 Earth months. Not much time to prepare for what might be the end of human independence. "We need to tell Earth," she said finally. "The President needs to know what we're facing." 3 days later, Katie stood in the Council chambers for what might be the last time. The enormous room was filled with representatives from hundreds of different species. Some looked like humans. Others were so alien that she couldn't even figure out where their faces were supposed to be. High Arbiter Zenthari towered over everyone else. The crystalline being was beautiful in a cold, distant way. Light seemed to flow through its transparent body like water, and when it spoke, the sound came from everywhere at once. "Human representative," Zenthari said. "Have you considered our offer?" Katie stood straight. She had practiced this moment, but her heart was still beating fast. "High Arbiter, the people of Earth have discussed your proposal. We respectfully decline." A wave of sound passed through the chamber. Some species made noises that might have been surprise. Others seemed pleased. Zenthari's light dimmed slightly. "You refuse our generous terms?" We refuse to give up our freedom, Katie said clearly. We refuse to let you change who we are. And we refuse to accept that humanity is too dangerous to govern itself. Then you choose to remain a threat to galactic peace. We choose to remain human. Zenthari's light pulsed. Very well. You have been warned of the consequences. We gave you this chance because we believed your species could be saved. You have chosen otherwise. Katie felt the weight of every eye in the chamber on her. High Arbiter, humanity has always sought peace with our galactic neighbors. We have honored every treaty, followed every law, and contributed to the common good. If you see that as a threat, then perhaps the problem isn't with us. Enough. Zenthari's voice cut through the air like ice. You have 1 galactic year to reconsider. If you maintain this position, the Council will be forced to take action to protect the peace and stability of our civilization. Katie nodded once. We understand. As she left the chamber, several other representatives approached her quietly. Most were from younger species, ones that had joined the galactic community more recently. They didn't say much, but their looks told her everything she needed to know. Humanity wasn't the only species that felt trapped by the Council's rules. Back on the new frontier, Katie sent her report to Earth. President Martinez would have to make the hardest decision in human history. Submit to the Council and lose everything that made them human, or refuse and face the most powerful military force in the galaxy. As her ship headed home, Katie thought about her daughter back on Earth. Sarah was only 12 years old, full of curiosity and dreams about exploring the stars. If the Council got their way, Sarah would grow up as a different kind of human entirely. Peaceful, obedient, and content to stay in one place forever. Katie stared out at the stars and made her own decision. Whatever happened next, humanity would face it as themselves. They had spent 50 years learning to live in this galaxy, but they had never forgotten who they were. If the Council wanted a fight, they would get one. The message had been delivered. The choice had been made. Now came the hard part. 6 months had passed since Ambassador Katie Sullivan delivered humanity's refusal to the Galactic Council. The deadline was getting closer, and everyone could feel the tension building like a storm about to break. Fleet Admiral Greg Patterson stood in the command center of Earth's primary space station, watching the tactical displays with growing concern. His second-in-command, Commander Beth Williams, approached with a data pad that made his stomach sink. Sir, our intelligence network has confirmed it, Beth said quietly. The Council isn't just planning to blockade us. They're assembling the largest military force in galactic history. Greg took the pad and studied the numbers. Ship counts, fleet positions, resource allocations. It was overwhelming. How many species are contributing forces? Nearly all of them, some willingly, others because they're afraid of what happens if they refuse. Beth pulled up a star map. They're staging fleets at 12 different points around human space. When they move, we'll be surrounded completely. Dr. Lisa Chen's voice came through the communication system from her laboratory on Earth. Admiral, I've been monitoring the quantum communication networks. The Council has been sending very specific instructions to their allies. What kind of instructions? Greg asked. They're calling it Operation Cleansing. They plan to disable our military completely, then land occupation forces on every human world. But here's the scary part. They've also ordered medical teams and genetic modification equipment for every planet. Greg felt cold. The Council wasn't just planning to defeat humanity. They were planning to change every human being in existence, starting with the children. 3 days later, the Council made their first move. Captain Ryan Brooks was leading a supply convoy when his communications officer, Sam Rodriguez, picked up the emergency signals. Captain, all trade routes to human space have been cut, Sam reported. Every alien merchant ship that was heading our way has turned around. Ryan stared at the tactical display. What about the supply depot at Kepler Station? Gone dark, sir. So have the fuel refineries at Proxima and the medical supply base at Wolf 359. Sam's voice was grim. It's like someone threw a switch and cut us off from the entire galaxy. Engineer Megan Foster looked up from her console. Captain, this is bad. We depend on alien technology for a lot of essential systems, medical equipment, power generators, life support backups. If we can't get replacement parts, go to you. I know. Ryan made a decision. Sam, send a message to all human ships and stations. Emergency supply conservation protocols effective immediately. Megan, I want you to work with Dr. Chen's team. We need alternatives to alien technology, and we need them fast. But Ryan had another plan. For months, he had been secretly exploring the outer rim of human space following leads from old council records. What he found there would change everything. On a dead planet called Xerion Prime, his team discovered the ruins of an ancient city. The buildings were made from materials that seemed familiar but wrong somehow, like looking at a distorted reflection. Dr. Alex Carter, the team's physicist, ran his scanners over the strange metal structures. Captain, these readings don't match any known alien alloy, but they're not completely unknown either. What do you mean? Ryan asked. It's like someone took council technology and improved it, made it stronger, more efficient, more elegant. Alex showed him the data. Whoever built this understood the science better than the species that taught it to them. Historian Dr. Nick Thompson was working with linguist Professor Amy Davis to decode the writing they found carved into the walls. After 3 days of work, they made a breakthrough that sent chills through the entire team. Captain, you need to see this, Nick said. His face was pale. We've translated enough to understand what happened here. The wall carvings told a story that sounded terrifyingly familiar. A young species had joined the galactic community. They were curious, innovative, and successful. They explored space rapidly and developed new technologies. They asked questions that made older species uncomfortable. The council came to them with the same offer they gave us, Amy explained. Submit to genetic modification and accept permanent oversight, or face the consequences. What did they choose? Ryan asked, though he already suspected the answer. They refused, just like we did. Nick pointed to another section of wall. The council declared them a threat to galactic peace and launched something they called a cleansing operation. What happened to them? They fought back, and according to this, they were winning. Amy's voice was filled with wonder and horror. Their technology was actually superior to the council's in many ways. But then what? Nick showed him the final section of carvings. The council did something that made their sun go unstable. The entire system was destroyed. Every planet, every ship, every living being. Nothing survived except these ruins, on worlds that were far enough away to escape the blast. Ryan felt sick. They committed genocide rather than let this species remain free. And then they erased them from galactic history, Amy added. Made it like they never existed at all. The team spent another week on Xerion Prime, gathering every piece of technology and information they could find. What they discovered was revolutionary. The vanished species had developed ways to improve on council technology that no one had ever imagined. Meanwhile, back in human space, Dr. Lisa Chen was making discoveries of her own. Working with her expanded team, including materials specialist Laura Martinez, she had been analyzing alien technology for months. We've been thinking about this all wrong, Lisa explained to Admiral Patterson during their weekly briefing. We assumed alien technology was more advanced because it was older, but age doesn't always mean better. What have you found? Patterson asked. Their technology is limited by their thinking. They follow the same patterns, use the same approaches, make the same assumptions. They haven't had a truly new idea in thousands of years. Lisa showed him her research. But humans think differently. We ask different questions, try different solutions. Laura added, We've improved the efficiency of their power systems by 30% just by changing the crystal matrix arrangement. And their shields? We figured out how to make them adaptive instead of static. Are you saying human technology could be better than theirs? I'm saying it already is, Lisa replied. In some areas anyway. We just need time to develop it fully. Time, unfortunately, was running out. The Council's massive fleet was moving into position around human space. Arbiter Veltarn, commanding the largest battle group, sent a final message to Earth. Humans of the third planet, you have 7 days to surrender unconditionally. Submit now, and your modification will be gentle. Resist, and we will be forced to take more aggressive measures to ensure galactic peace. Admiral Patterson read the message to the Emergency Council on Earth. President Martinez looked tired but determined. Admiral, what are our chances if we fight? Honestly, sir, based on conventional analysis, we don't have any. They outnumber us 1,000 to 1, and their technology should be far superior to ours. Should be? Patterson allowed himself a small smile. Dr. Chen's research suggests that might not be entirely accurate, and Captain Brooks found something that could change the entire situation. Then we fight? Yes, sir. We fight. The trap was closing around humanity, but they were no longer the helpless prey the Council expected them to be. The Council's first attack wave appeared at the edge of human space exactly when Arbiter Veltarn had promised. Admiral Jake Morrison watched from his command bridge aboard the Liberty as hundreds of alien ships emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. They're not even trying to hide their approach, said Commander Tony Reed, his tactical officer. They think this will be easy. Major Kelly Walsh, the strategic analyst, studied her displays with intense focus. Sir, they're following standard Council doctrine exactly. No innovation, no adaptation, just overwhelming force applied in predictable patterns. Jake nodded. For months, his people had been studying every piece of Council military data they could find. The aliens were powerful, but they were also rigid in their thinking. They did the same things the same way over and over again. All ships, this is Admiral Morrison, he broadcast to the human fleet. Remember your training. Stay flexible, stay creative, and trust your instincts. Show them what happens when you corner a human. The first surprise came when the Council fleet encountered humanity's outer defense perimeter. Chief Engineer Rob Parker had spent the last 6 months developing something that should have been impossible. Mines that could phase through energy shields. Direct hit on the lead Council cruiser, reported Lieutenant Colonel Julie Hayes from the weapons control station. Their shields didn't even register the impact. Veltarn's confident voice came over the communication channels. Humans, your primitive weapons cannot penetrate our defenses. Surrender now and avoid unnecessary casualties. The second surprise came when Captain Ryan Brooks led his strike force out from behind the asteroid field where they had been hiding. The Pioneer and 12 other ships moved in patterns that violated every rule of space combat the Council had ever seen. How are they moving like that? Veltarn demanded of his tactical staff. Their ships should not be capable of those maneuvers. Brooks smiled grimly as he listened to the intercepted transmission. His engineer, Lieutenant Dan Murphy, had modified their engines using principles learned from the ruins on Xerion Prime. The human ships could now change direction and speed in ways that seemed to break the laws of physics. Flight leader Sarah Kim led her squadron of fighters in an impossible spiral pattern that confused the Council's targeting systems completely. Her pilots wove between enemy ships like dancers, striking at vulnerable points and disappearing before return fire could reach them. But the real shock for the Council came when Dr. Lisa Chen activated humanity's secret communication network. Every human ship, station, and planet connected instantly through a quantum system that operated on frequencies the Council couldn't detect or block. All units, this is command, came the clear voice of Admiral Greg Patterson from Earth. Execute. Operation Homecoming. Suddenly, space around the Council fleet filled with human ships that hadn't been there moments before. They emerged from hiding places in asteroid fields, gas giant atmospheres, and the dark spaces between stars. Ships that the Council's sensors had never detected, built in secret shipyards that officially didn't exist. Chief designer Mike Torres had spent 2 years overseeing the construction of these hidden vessels. Manufacturing director Rachel Green had coordinated the massive industrial effort while making it look like humanity was just building civilian infrastructure. Impossible, Veltarn whispered as he watched his tactical display. The human fleet was 3 times larger than Council intelligence had estimated. Worse, their ships were moving and fighting with coordination that shouldn't have been achievable. The Council's advantage in numbers was rapidly disappearing, but their technological superiority should still have been decisive. That's when they encountered the third surprise. Dr. Alex Carter's modifications to human weapon systems had done more than improve efficiency. The human ships were now armed with weapons that could predict where enemy vessels would be, not just where they were. Energy beams curved around obstacles and projectiles changed course in flight to hit their targets. "Their weapons are learning," reported a panicked Council technician. "They're adapting to our defensive patterns in real time." Captain Lisa Brown, commanding the diplomatic vessel Unity, chose that moment to reveal humanity's biggest secret of all. "Attention all ships," she broadcast on frequencies that reached every species in the battle. "This is Captain Brown of the human Unity. Any vessel that wishes to withdraw from this conflict may do so without interference. We have no quarrel with those who are here unwillingly." The response was immediate. Ships from a dozen different species began breaking away from the Council formation. The Zephyrians, who had been secretly coordinating with Commander Steve Jackson for months, turned their entire squadron around and joined the human fleet. "What is happening?" Veltarn screamed at his communication staff. "Why are our allies abandoning us?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Marine biologist Dr. Emma Wright had spent the last year building relationships with the aquatic nautilins. Their underwater cities had provided perfect hiding places for human supply bases and repair facilities. "The young species have been talking to each other," she explained over the open channel. "We're not the only ones who were tired of Council control. We're just the first ones brave enough to do something about it." The battle turned into a rout as more and more alien ships switched sides or simply fled. The Council's perfect formation collapsed into chaos as they found themselves outnumbered and outmaneuvered by an enemy they had completely underestimated. Veltarn made a desperate decision. "All ships, target the human homeworld. If we cannot defeat their fleet, we will destroy their planet." But Admiral Patterson had anticipated this move. "Captain Brooks, execute Plan Omega." Brooks and his task force, now joined by allies from 6 different species, appeared between the Council fleet and Earth. But they weren't alone. The space around Earth filled with defensive platforms that had been hidden in orbit for months. "Those are not standard human weapons," one of Veltarn's advisors reported in terror. "The energy signatures don't match anything in our database." The platforms were armed with weapons based on technology from Xerion Prime, improved by human innovation and built with materials provided by their new alien allies. When they fired, the Council ships discovered that their shields were useless against weapons that operated on completely different principles. "All Council ships, this is Admiral Morrison," came the calm voice over the communication channels. "Your fleet is defeated. Your allies have abandoned you. You have 2 choices: surrender and be treated with honor, or continue fighting and be destroyed. Choose quickly." Veltarn looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They were afraid, confused, and beaten. The humans had done the impossible. They had turned a certain Council victory into a humiliating defeat. "This is not over," Veltarn transmitted. "The Council will never accept this outcome." "The Council," replied Katie Sullivan's voice from the New Frontier, "no longer gets to make that decision." As the surviving Council ships limped away from human space, they carried news that would shake the galaxy to its foundations. The news of humanity's victory spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. Within days, species that had never spoken to each other were sharing the same impossible story. The humans had defeated the Galactic Council's fleet and lived to tell about it. High Arbiter Zenthari stood in the Council's emergency chamber, surrounded by the most powerful beings in known space. But for the first time in thousands of years, they looked afraid. "How is this possible?" demanded Arbiter Kesserin, whose crystalline voice cracked with panic. "Our intelligence said they had fewer than 200 ships. Where did thousands of vessels come from?" "They have been lying to us," Zenthari replied, light pulsing angrily through its transparent body. "Building in secret, planning in secret, coordinating with our own subjects behind our backs." Arbiter Morden, eldest of the Council, projected his thoughts directly into their minds. This is not just about ships and weapons. They have done something far more dangerous. They have given hope to species that had forgotten what freedom felt like. The proof of his words came in the reports flooding into the council chambers. On 12 different worlds, younger species were refusing to follow council orders. Trade routes were being disrupted as merchant ships chose to deal with humans instead of council-approved suppliers. Most terrifying of all, several species were openly requesting human protection. Ambassador Katie Sullivan stood before the largest gathering of alien representatives in galactic history. But this time, she wasn't in the council chambers. She was aboard the New Horizon, a massive station that had been built in secret over the past year. "Friends and neighbors," she began, her words being translated into hundreds of languages simultaneously by Dr. Patricia Lewis and her team. "We didn't fight the council because we wanted to conquer anyone. We fought because we refused to be slaves." The audience included representatives from species that had never been allowed to speak in the old council chambers. The aquatic nautilins floated in specially designed tanks while the gas-breathing Zephyrians hovered in environmental suits. For the first time in centuries, every voice could be heard. "Today, we propose something new," Katie continued. "Not a council that rules through fear, but a federation that governs through cooperation. Not masters and subjects, but partners working together for everyone's benefit." Captain Ryan Brooks watched the proceedings from the station's command center alongside his crew. Sam Rodriguez monitored communication channels from across the galaxy, while Megan Foster coordinated with engineering teams from dozens of different species. "Captain, the response is incredible," Sam reported. "We're getting messages of support from over 300 different worlds. Species we've never even heard of are asking to join the Federation. But the old council wasn't finished yet. Centauri had one final card to play, and it was the most terrible weapon in their arsenal. If we cannot rule the galaxy, then perhaps it is time for the galaxy to learn why younger species require guidance," Centauri announced to its fellow council members. "Prepare the Star Killers." The Star Killers were weapons of incredible destruction, capable of making suns unstable and destroying entire solar systems. The Council had used them before, centuries ago, to eliminate species that refused to submit. Now they plan to use them again. Admiral Greg Patterson received the intelligence report while coordinating refugee fleets carrying populations that were fleeing Council-controlled space. Commander Beth Williams had been working around the clock to establish safe passage routes for the thousands of ships seeking human protection. "Sir, our deep space monitoring stations have detected massive energy buildups in 3 council systems," Beth reported. "The energy signatures match theoretical models for stellar destabilization weapons." Patterson felt cold. "They're going to destroy inhabited systems?" "It looks that way, sir, and not just empty systems. They're targeting worlds with large populations that have declared support for the Federation." This was exactly what Captain Brooks had feared when his team discovered the ruins on Zarian Prime. The Council's ultimate response to defiance wasn't conquest or occupation. It was complete annihilation, but humanity had learned from the mistakes of the vanished species. Dr. Lisa Chen and her expanded research team, now including scientists from 15 different worlds, had been preparing for this possibility. "Admiral, we have a solution," Dr. Chris Anderson announced from the Joint Research Facility. "It's risky, but it should work." The solution was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of trying to stop the Star Killers directly, they would use the Council's own rigid thinking against them. Engineer Paula Scott had designed a network of devices that could be deployed around threatened stars. "The Council weapons work by disrupting the magnetic fields that keep stars stable," Paula explained. "But if we can generate counterfields, at precisely the right frequencies, we can neutralize the effect." The plan required split-second timing and perfect coordination across multiple star systems simultaneously. It was the kind of complex operation that should have been impossible for such a young civilization to manage. That's when humanity's greatest strength showed itself once again. The quantum communication network that Dr. Chen had developed allowed instant coordination across the entire galaxy. Every human ship, station, and allied vessel could work together as if they were in the same room. Captain Brooks led the mission, commanding a joint task force that included ships from 23 different species. They reached the first threatened system just as the Council's Star Killer began its work. Deploying field generators, reported Lieutenant Dan Murphy as their modified ships moved into position around the star. All ships match our frequency and timing exactly. The next few minutes would determine the fate of 3 billion innocent beings living on the planets around that star. The Council weapon sent massive pulses of energy into the sun's core, trying to trigger the cascade reaction that would make it explode. But this time the weapon met resistance. The combined field generators created a protective shell around the star, absorbing and redirecting the destructive energy. Instead of destabilizing the sun, the Council's attack was harmlessly dispersed into space. It worked, Sarah Kim broadcast from her fighter squadron. The star is stable, the planets are safe. The same scene played out in 2 other systems, with human-led task forces protecting stars and saving worlds while the galaxy watched in amazement. The Council's ultimate weapon had been defeated by cooperation and ingenuity. Xanthari's final transmission reached every corner of known space. This is not over. The Council has maintained order for 10,000 years. We will not allow chaos to reign. Ambassador Sullivan's response was broadcast on the same frequencies. The age of the Council is over. The age of freedom has begun. 6 months later, Dr. Lisa Chen floated in the zero-gravity laboratory aboard the New Horizon, working alongside colleagues whose names she was still learning to pronounce. The Nautilin biochemist next to her was developing medical treatments that would have been impossible under Council restrictions. Across the lab, a Zephyrian engineer was designing ships that could travel between dimensions. "Dr. Chen," called Dr. Anderson from across the room. "You need to see this. The quantum resonance readings from the Andromeda Array are incredible." Lisa smiled as she pushed off from her workstation. They were developing technologies that the Council had declared impossible, exploring scientific principles that had been forbidden for centuries. The galaxy was finally free to grow, to learn, to become something better than it had ever been before. Outside the station's massive windows, ships from hundreds of different worlds moved through space in peaceful cooperation. The Galactic Federation was young, but it was growing stronger every day. And at its heart was the simple human belief that freedom was worth fighting for, and that working together was always better than standing alone. The Council had tried to control humanity, and it had backfired in the most spectacular way possible. The galaxy would never be the same.